Oh, we meet again. Back for another chapter of By the Great Horn Spoon, I see. Well, this should be a good one. I think they're headed for, Shirt Tail Camp. Maybe they'll find Cut-Eye Higgins there. It's chapter 16. Ooh, the Grave Diggers. This should be a good one. They were 2 days finding their way to Shirt Tail Camp. They followed the south fork of the American River into the winding Coloma Valley. The summer hills were red and yellow. They passed within 10 feet of old Cap Sutter's sawmill. Jack heard everyone in the diggings refer to Sutter as Old Cap, and he knew the miners' yarns about the sawmill. He looked at it now, a rough timbered shack on stilts at the water's edge. And if you want to, you can go see it. It's not very far at all from your school. Take a little drive up Highway 50, head towards Coloma, and you can go see Sutter's Sawmill. And that's where they discovered gold. It's called Discovery Park. And it's right here where we live. Isn't that amazing? Right on the American River, the South Fork. Old Cap had hired a carpenter named Jim Marshall to build it. And that was the way the yarn began. Remember, a yarn is a story. On a chill January morning in 48, the carpenter spied a yellow glitter in the tail race. He thought it might be fool's gold until he beat it with a rock. That was the test. Fool's gold was brittle and would splinter. Real gold was soft and would flatten out. The lump flattened out like a yellow button. Marshall rushed off to Sacramento, where Old Cap had built a fort, and arrived in a pouring rain with the news. He made Old Cap bolt the door, pulled a white cotton rag from his pocket of his wet pantaloons, and revealed his discovery. Jim Marshall was so excited he could barely speak. The two men tried other tests. They got bowls of water and a scale, and using equal amount of silver, they weighed the two metals underwater. The gold was heavier, and then they tested the samples with acid to see if it would corrode. It wouldn't. There was no longer any question about Marshall's discovery in the tail race. He had found gold. The news leaked out, and the rush for yellow treasure began. Squatters came storming into the valley, and now a town had sprung up on both sides of the river. Jack had never seen so many long toms and rockers in his life. "Is this the way to Shirt Tail Camp?" Praiseworthy asked, a miner standing knee-deep in the water and mud. "Just follow the river. If you hurry, you might get there in time for the hanging. A lot of boys has taken the day off for the festivities." Praiseworthy shrugged. "We're in no hurry, my partner and I. It's that dentist fella. They caught him trying to run off on a stolen horse. Ooh, they're going to hang a dentist. Could it be Cut-Eye Higgins? Oh, my gosh." Praiseworthy and Jack exchanged a glance. Quick. The map. Only Cut-Eye Higgins knew where Dr. Bugby's gold bonanza might be. He couldn't talk very well hanging from a limb, much as he deserved it, no doubt. "On second thought," said Praiseworthy, "we're in a terrible hurry. Good day, sir." They arrived at Shirt Tail Camp in an hour. It was a dusty village with round tents and square tents and plank shacks roofed with pine boughs. "There," said Jack. "There he is." I need some water. He saw Cut-Eye Higgins seated on a horse under the limb of a tree. He wore his yippee-yappa hat, and around his neck a noose. The scar across his eye set his face at a hard squint. The crowd was ringed round him. "We're just in time," Jack murmured. Praiseworthy whipped out Stubbs' red bandana, blindfold, and quickly tied it around Jack's face. "Partner, you've got a toothache." "What?" "Moan now and then. Good and loud. Come on." Jack gulped and followed Praiseworthy through the crowd. A paunchy man with a curly fringe of whiskers from ear to ear seemed to be in charge of the festivities. "Doc," he was saying, "you know the verdict of the jury. As justice of the peace of Shirt Tail Camp, I'll see you get a good burying as benefits a professional man such as yourself. We don't mind so much that you extracted a gold pouch every time we opened our mouth. There's plenty of yeller around. But that you light-fingered every pocket watch in town so nobody knows what time it is. You're a professional man, and we tried to make allowances, but horse stealing is a heinous crime, and you got to pay the penalty. Since you said your last words 2-3 times already this afternoon, let's get on with it. Boys, switch that horse." "Hold on," demanded Praiseworthy, stepping forward. "I've got a lad here with a powerful toothache." The justice of the peace threw his hat down. "Well, doggone, that's the third one today. We'll never get him strung up." "I beg of you, gents," said Praiseworthy. "We've come a long way, and it'll only take a moment. The boy's in pain. Listen to him." Jack bellowed and held his hand to his cheek. He wasn't pretending. He was downright scared they might let Cut-Eye Higgins pull one of his teeth. "All right," said the chin-whiskered official. "Get the doc down off of that horse. Hiram, give him back his forceps and bring that molasses barrel for the boy to sit on." Jack moaned again and watched the men help Cut-Eye Higgins off the saddle. He seemed a little weak in the knees. They cut the rope binding his wrists from behind his back, but left the noose around his neck. He peered from Jack to Praiseworthy. It was a moment before he recognized the butler in the red shirt, jack boots, and whiskers. "Never thought I'd be glad to see you again," he said. His face was pale, and his usual sneer was gone. Reluctantly, Jack seated himself on the molasses barrel, and the doomed man clapped an eye on him. "Open your mouth, son. Stop squirming." Jack took one look at the steel forceps in Cut-Eye Higgins' shaky hand and decided that a team of mules wasn't going to get his mouth open. "Let's see them ivories," Cut-Eye Higgins said under his breath. "I'll just tinker. You didn't come to me to have any yanked." "We came here for the map," Praiseworthy muttered. "I figured. Get me out of this, and the map is yours." Praiseworthy nodded. "It's a bargain. I'll do the best I can, but first, the map. I don't trust you with a noose, even with a noose around your neck." Cut-Eye Higgins lifted off his yippee-yappa hat and fished a thick, folded strip of brown paper out of the sweatband. It was as if he kept it there only to make his hat fit. When he returned the hat to his head, he slipped it down almost to his ears. "There's my part of the bargain. Now you keep yours. Open them jaws, boy." Jack swallowed hard and opened up. The crowd watched and waited. Cut-Eye Higgins wiped the forceps on his sleeves and set to work. Praiseworthy opened up the folds of the brown paper, studied the markings, and within seconds he saw that the foxy scoundrel had outfoxed him again. The map traced a line along the north fork of the American River through the Colomic Valley and ended with an X mark that could only be Shirt Tail Camp. "Why, this map is no good," snapped Praiseworthy. "I didn't say it was, except to make my hat fit. But that's the map Buckby's brother made before he died the same. It's the genuine article. Only in the meantime, them pockets of gold got discovered all over again. By the time I got here, there was 100 miners on the spot." Jack moaned as best he could, with the forceps trying to spread his teeth apart. Their 50-50 share of Dr. Buckby's mine was worthless. Cut-Eye Higgins had led them on a wild goose chase. "Now get me out of this noose," said Cut-Eye Higgins. "That was our bargain, wasn't it?" Praiseworthy ripped the map to pieces. He'd given his word, and he had to stand by it. "Gentlemen," he said, turning to the justice of the peace and the others grouped around him, "I take it you have acted as judge and jury in this case?" "That's right," answered the official. "He got a fair trial, and anyway, he was caught red-handed." "Was he represented by counsel?" "What for? We knew he was guilty." "Under what law do you intend to dispatch Doc Higgins from the limb of that tree?" "Well, everyone knows horse stealing's agin the law." "What law?" "Now listen here, stranger. There ain't a law book within 50 miles that I know of. I hear they had one over at Growlersburg, but it was printed on thin paper and the boys took it to roll cigarettes with. Speaking for myself, I don't see any reason to let the law interfere with justice around here. We never did before." Praiseworthy began pacing slowly back and forth. "In the absence of book law, gentlemen, I recommend you to notice that humanity is also lacking in this case. You're about to string up the only dentist in these diggings. Is that humane? He may deserve his fate, but what of the innocent whose only crime is to come down with a toothache?" Praiseworthy turned and made like a grand court gesture toward Jack. "Like my young partner there. Think of the pain and suffering you will inflict on those in dire need of a tooth extractor. Tomorrow it may be you, sir, with your cheeks swelled up like a melon. Or you, sir, Mr. Justice of the Peace, with a pain in your jaw as if you had a bee for a molar stinging away from morning till night." One by one, he singled out the gentlemen of the jury, and one by one they found themselves rubbing their jaws, as if they could almost feel a toothache coming on. Praiseworthy had never made a speech in his life, but the words rolled off his tongue, and he could feel their effect on the crowd. When he finished, he was greeted with a yell of approval. "He's talking sense," someone called out. "Doc can't pull teeth if he's 6 feet under. We could just put him in jail." The justice of the shirt camp shook his head. "Boys, we ain't got no jail. Now, you know that. The verdict was string him up, but, well, I suppose we could delay the sentence until another tooth extractor shows up in these parts. There's bound to be one before long. Well, then we'll get on with the sentence." There was a general approval from the crowd, and two toothaches broke out on the spot. Praiseworthy was astonished by the power he had found in his voice. The 2 miners got in line at the molasses barrel, and Jack was glad to give up his place. "My tooth has stopped hurting," he said, and Cut-Eye Higgins gave him a wink with his bad eye. "Doc Higgins," said the justice of the peace, "well, you got yourself a temporary reprieve. When you finish with them extracting jobs, you stand still, and we're going to build a jailhouse round you. There'll be visiting hours for anyone with a toothache, but I'll see you hung yet, and as soon as possible." And then he turned to Praiseworthy. "Stranger, I promised the doc a good burying, befitting a professional man. Might as well get all the readiness. Since you appointed yourself counsel for the defense, you get up there in the hills and dig him a resting place. Make it 6 feet deep." "Why 6 feet?" "Don't be cantankerous. I'll fine you for being in contempt of court. Everybody knows a grave's got to be 6 feet deep. Now get going." The 2 partners returned to their burrow and led him into the hills above the diggings. "You sure made a good speech," Jack said. "It was something to hear. A regular lawyer couldn't have done better. And you saved Cut-Eye Higgins from being strung up. It's just temporary," which is about all he deserves. They chose a bare spot about a half a mile from camp. It was on the bluff covered with oak straw and was overlooking the river. They pulled pick and shovel from Stubbs' pack ropes and set to work. "Fine-looking country, isn't it?" Praiseworthy muttered, "even to be buried in." Jack tried not to think about Boston. It would soon be time to start back, and all they had to show for their labors was a worthless map. Poor Aunt Arabella, he thought. They would lose the house for sure. The entire trip to California was beginning to look like a wild goose chase. When they got the hole 4 feet deep, they couldn't go any farther. They had hit bedrock and struck gold. That's the end of chapter 16. So they're out there digging a grave for Cut-Eye Higgins that they're going to use later once they get a replacement dentist in town. And what do you know? They hit gold. Oh my gosh, I can't wait for chapter 17, but it's going to have to be another day. Adios, my friends.